Chapter 4. The 5 Fundamental Wealth Building Strategies of Real Estate. How the rich legally make more money. How is it that the rich got that way? Some of them inherited their wealth and some just lucked into it. By and large, though, inheritances and whims of fortune get frittered away. What does it take to create real, sustained wealth that endures through up markets and down markets? What does it take to create the kind of wealth that can create foundations and leave legacies for the future? It takes doing things differently. At a young age, Dolph made a study of the wealthy and found that most had either made or held their wealth in real estate. Diane made a similar study of the wealthy clients of her CPA firm. She discovered that the wealthy made purposeful wealth, building decisions based on tax laws. They then used 5 fundamental wealth-building strategies to exponentially increase their returns from investments. First, though, let's look at the principles of creating tax-advantaged wealth-building strategies. Jumpstart your wealth. Diane introduced the Jumpstart method of tax-advantaged wealth building in Loopholes of the Rich, How the Rich Legally Make More Money and Pay Less Tax, 2004 Wiley. See Figure 4.1. This method takes advantage of the 3 major components of favorable tax laws. These are 1. Your business, 2. Your real estate investments, and 3. Your home. Did you notice that 2 of the 3 sources of tax loopholes come from real estate? And if your business buys the building it is in, you've got yet another real estate component. There are 7 steps to this method. You can choose to do any or all of the following. Jumpstart steps. The more fully you participate in as many of the steps as possible, the faster and bigger your positive results will be. 1. Create a business. Make sure it's in the proper business structure and that you have anticipated. 1. At least one clear exit strategy. 2. Sources of funding for the business. 3. How to take money out of the business. And 4. A strategy to run the business in a way that reduces risk for you. Sometimes starting a business is as simple as changing your employment status from an employee to an independent contractor. 2. Discover your hidden business deductions. It can be a major eye-opener when the first-time business owner discovers all the things that are now tax deductible. These are the things you used to spend personal money on. The difference is that they are now deductible. Discover and properly document those expenses. This is how your business can give you money tax-free. 3. Pay your taxes. Use proper planning to prepay just enough in taxes at the latest possible time. In this way, you can get 0% loans from the government on your tax money. When you have multiple businesses in the right structures, you can often select when you want to pay taxes and defer payment to a far distant time. 4. What's left goes into real estate. You might not be able to hit the ideal investment strategy of having all leftover business cash go into real estate. But the more you can put into real estate without needing to draw anything for personal living expenses, the faster your income will grow. Make sure your real estate investment is done using the proper leverage with the optimum structures. 5. Real estate income comes out tax-free. A good real estate investment will create positive cash flow for you. If you have made a good deal, you'll have positive cash flow from the first day. And if you have a good tax plan, you'll pay 0 taxes on that cash flow. 6. Buy a house the right way. You need a place to live, and let's face it, that's not an asset that will put money in your pocket. In fact, your home quite likely will be one of the biggest expenses you'll have. Look for good deals in neighborhoods that are appreciating and make the best deal possible on financing. Make sure you have a contingency plan in case the value drops and your other income goes down. And above all, use the homestead laws and/or proper business structures to protect your investment. 7. Make your home give you money. The biggest gift that Congress has ever given us is available only for homeowners. The one requirement is that you have to move. You can also take the money out, tax-free, from your home to invest in other businesses or real estate properties. It's a gift. Take advantage of all that the IRS allows. Did you notice that steps 4 through 7 all relate to real estate? We'll concentrate on those steps throughout the rest of the book. Real estate investing grows wealth even faster when you take advantage of the 5 wealth-building strategies. 1. Leverage of money. 2. Leverage of time. 3. Velocity. 4. Cash flow. 5. Risk reduction. Wealth-building strategy number 1. Leverage of money. Leverage means to do more with less. It is truly the definition of power. The most obvious leverage comes about from the leverage of money. That's one of the best, most recognizable benefits of real estate. You can use other people's money to build your wealth. Can you do it on your own, paying cash for everything? Of course, but without leverage, you've lost some of your power. If you decide to build wealth through real estate and never use the leverage of money, you will need to find another method to create the wealth or resign yourself to the fact that your wealth will grow very slowly. Imagine having $100,000 to invest in real estate. You choose a slow, safe area to invest in that has experienced an average appreciation of 6% per year for the past 5 years. Your choice is to invest in a building using only cash, your $100,000, or to buy a building for $1,000 using financing for 90% of the purchase. Now fast forward 1 year. The two buildings have both appreciated by 6%, just as in the past. The $100,000 building is now worth $106,000. The $1,000 building is now worth $160,000. If you had bought the first building, you would now have equity of $106,000. That's a return of 6%. If you had bought the second building, you would now have equity of $160,000. That's a return of 60%. But wait, you exclaim, how could I make the payments for the mortgage on the $1,000 building? I owe $900,000. Well, that's where tenants come in. Learn to love tenants because they provide the pathway to wealth. Remember also, if you lose some of the tenants and have periods of negative cash flow, you owe the payments on the building. You won't suddenly owe $900,000. You will owe $7,000 or so each month in payments. We recommend that you use the 5-basket method for determining the amount of cash you need for your financial strategies. This method, outlined in our free ebook, Financial Planning for Real Estate Investors, available at www.dolphindiane.com, uses 5 primary baskets for building your funds: security, emergency, income, growth. High risk. Emergency basket. The emergency basket covers emergency items that come up just through normal living. It is especially important for people who have experienced credit card debt in the past due to emergencies such as medical issues, car problems, or even the water heater breaking down. The credit card debt comes about because there wasn't an emergency basket available to cover the expenses. Income basket. The income basket is the basket that provides the cash flow to create passive income, the income you don't have to work for. This could also be a business that provides income even when you aren't working, or other investments that provide a return of income. In other words, this is the basket that gets you financially free. Growth basket. The growth basket takes advantage of appreciating markets to build wealth through equity. It could also include other appreciating assets such as a business that at some point could be sold. The easiest way to build the growth basket, however, is through the use of real estate. High-risk basket. The high-risk basket is for the gambler in us. Use this only after you've built the other 4 baskets sufficiently to safely build your own wealth. The high-risk basket is the source of funds for the investments that have less certain returns. In other words, those are the deals that seem pretty compelling, but down deep, we're pretty certain that they are just too good to be true. If you've got all of your other baskets handled and you want the adrenaline rush of a high-risk investment, use these funds to give yourself a little jolt.
The power of leverage of money. Let's go back to the example of the two houses. Assume that you have followed the financial planning for real estate investors plan of baskets. You've got the risk covered. Knowing that, would you rather have $60,000 or $6,000 after just 1 year of investing? The power of leverage gives you the bigger return. Financial planning for real estate investors. Make sure you have sufficient funds in each of the following baskets. Security. With no property, consider 3 to 6 months of expenses. Decrease if you have multiple sources of income. Emergency. Make sure you have enough to cover emergencies. A good rule of thumb is $2,000 to $5,000 plus $1,000 per each family member. Income. Invest enough so that you have passive income to provide for all of your expenses. The amount needed will vary based on the return from your assets. Growth. This fund protects against inflation and currency fluctuation. The exact amount will be a factor based on the worldwide diversification of your investments and the return of capital. High risk. This fund provides the roll the dice funds for high-risk ventures. It's not necessary to put money aside if your personality type is not such that this is appealing. But if you're always excited by the next get-rich-quick scheme, then give yourself a budget for those ventures and stick to it. Otherwise, use the tried-and-true methods to build your wealth. Wealth building strategy. Number 2, leverage of time. Why do you want to invest in real estate? Most people are looking to build real estate wealth because they think that those sources of income will give them more freedom. That freedom is usually expressed as the freedoms of choice, flexibility, and primarily time. Yet, these same people who are looking for more time through real estate sometimes end up spending all of their time finding, fixing up, managing, and selling real estate. What went wrong? The problem is that they haven't fully understood and used the leverage of time that is also available for real estate investors. The easiest way to think about this form of leverage is to picture a simple lever. It's nothing more than a long board resting on a fulcrum. On one side of the lever, picture all the things you want from real estate. A sample of those benefits might be choice, time, money, passive income, wealth, and retirement. The fulcrum that moves those things is your real estate investments, figure 4.2. The 5 forces that move that lever are 1. Knowledge. 2. Systems. 3. Other people's time. 4. Other people's knowledge. 5. Other people's systems, knowledge. Notice that knowledge is closest to the middle. Have you ever noticed that as you move out on the lever, you need to apply less and less pressure to make the other side move? The leverage points closer to the fulcrum have less power available. The knowledge you gain by yourself is a critical first step, but it is also the least powerful leverage point. This is the knowledge you gain about finding, investing, fixing, maintaining, and leasing real estate, and knowledge you personally gain about running a business. At this level, though, it's just you getting the knowledge. You have to put more effort into it, because you have to do all the work as well. That's why it seems hard to find the time for your investments in the beginning. Systems. The second point, moving out away from the fulcrum, is systems. These are the systems that you develop in defining how things get done for your company. At this point, you're still doing all of the work. In the beginning with your business, this might be the way you feel you need to operate due to cash flow concerns. You might even decide to handle your accounting and tax work yourself during this step. The systems make it easier, but it still is a lot of work because you have to do it all. Other people's time. The third point is other people's time. You hire advisors and employees to help you by adding their expertise. You're now also starting to see more leverage from your actions. That's because other people are doing work. You don't need to do everything. You have other people working with you. By the way, you don't need to spend a certain amount of time or own a certain number of properties until you get to this point. We have a whole section near the end of the book on how to develop your team. For many people, this is as far as they can see how to use leverage in their business. And to be honest, we've seen people only get this far and make over $1 million a year. They mastered the first 3 leverage points: knowledge, systems, and other people's time. But there are 2 more leverage points, even more powerful than the others, still available. Other people's knowledge. The 4th point is other people's knowledge. This is the point that many people get stuck on. They want to be the smartest person they know. And even though they may claim otherwise, they get rid of anyone who might challenge their authority or their ideas. It's the old my way or the highway management style. A powerful way to use other people's knowledge is by hiring the best advisors. Do your current advisors know more than you do? Or does it feel like you're constantly giving them new ideas to research? You'll know you're fully immersed in using other people's knowledge, as well as the first 3 leverage points, when you sometimes feel that you're not familiar with all the details, but you do know that all of your statistics are going up. There is money in your bank. Your wealth is increasing. Your personal baskets are all filling up nicely. Other people's systems? The 5th leverage point is even more significant. It's other people's systems. Have you ever found a brilliant advisor and had a great relationship at first, only to have him get so busy he couldn't return your phone calls anymore? You can find people who have the knowledge, if you're lucky, but it's very rare to find top advisors who also know how to build businesses themselves. Other people's systems means that you have others on your team who can deliver high-quality, consistent advice to their clients, no matter how many clients they have. Systems allow quality leverage to occur. With all 5 leverage points, you are maximizing your leverage plus other people's leverage. The bottom line is that you'll get more powerful results more rapidly. 5 points of leverage. The secret of creating more time. 1. Knowledge. Build your knowledge of your business and all of its components. 2. Systems. Develop systems for repetitive tasks and activities. 3. Other people's time. You don't have to do it to get it done. 4. Other people's knowledge. Hire advisors who have information that enhances your projects. Don't be the smartest, most capable person on your team. 5. Other people's systems. Work with outside contractors who have systems of their own. You should never have to worry about whether one of your team members will have time to return your phone call. Wealth building factor number 3, velocity. Many wealth planners talk about the need to assess your current financial status and then determine where you want to be in order to create the plan for building wealth. We definitely agree that is important. But we want to talk about an additional component: velocity. Velocity is the speed at which you're moving on that path. Once you've calculated your velocity, you'll not only know where you are going, but how fast it will take to get there. First, though, let's investigate the source of the term velocity. Macroeconomics, the study of broad economic activities and trends, is possibly the largest subfield in economics. And it's from economics classes that the term velocity in relationship to money was first used. The velocity of money refers to the number of times an individual unit of currency turns over, example, is spent, in a specific period of time. Velocity affects the amount of economic activity generated by a given money supply. Velocity is important for measuring the rate at which money in circulation is used for purchasing goods and services. This helps investors gauge how robust the economy is. The faster the velocity is, the stronger the economy will be. The same is true for your own economy or the amount of wealth you have. The faster your personal decision-making and decision-acting velocity, the more wealth you will create. Some of the components of velocity are your abilities to make a quick go, no-go decision. Act on decisions to improve the value of your property. Earlier, we discussed how the leverage of money works to build you wealth faster. Now, let's look at that same example and add the velocity to the leverage of money. Figure 4.3. In the first plan, let's assume that you buy a property for $200,000 with 10% down. We'll assume that your property only goes up in value by 5% and that you rent the property for the exact amount of costs. That means no cash flow in or out. It's neutral. At the end of 20 years, your $20,000 equity has become $427,519. In the second plan, let's assume that you buy the same property with 10% down. Only in this case, you refinance in 5 years to take the equity out of the property. You use that money to buy another property with 10%. You wait 5 years and repeat. At the end of 20 years, your $20,000 equity has now become $6,780,362. The difference between those two plans is millions of dollars, and yet no extra money was used to create the extra value. Velocity made the difference. Potential velocity trap. Contingent liability can reduce your velocity. This includes personal guarantees, co-signing for loans, or acting as a co-borrower. You might sign without thinking for a loan for a friend or perhaps your child, and then find years later that this loan actually counts against your borrowing capacity. In other words, the co-signing hurt your personal velocity ability. Think before you sign.
Wealth building strategy number 4, cash flow. Cash is king, is the old saying. Positive cash flow is what keeps your investing going. In fact, one of the baskets of cash is income from passive investments. You can't fill that basket with assets unless those assets create cash flow. We frequently meet people who have a great deal on a vacation property or on bare land. They believe that any real estate is good real estate, and so forget about why they're investing in real estate in the first place. If your goal for real estate is to create alternative sources of income, then be very careful where you invest. Fill up your income basket first before you move to high risk. Above all, keep the cash flow going so you have the cash you need to keep your whole plan working. It is possible to find properties that create positive cash flow. They might not be readily available in your hometown, and that's when you will need to look for more creative deals or possibly look outside your home. One of Diane's clients is a real estate broker who was nervously moving back into real estate after a series of financial disasters in the early 1990s. Back then, she had owned 10 single-family homes with negative cash flow. She didn't worry that she needed to keep putting money into the properties to just make the monthly payments, because they were all greatly appreciating. This was during the 1980s in Phoenix, Arizona. Then, the real estate market downturn struck. The properties suddenly weren't worth as much. Plus, she worked in real estate, and that industry was really down, so she was facing much lower income from her job. She was now in a bind. She couldn't afford to keep paying for those negative cash-flowing properties, and the market was down. She panicked and sold them for even greater losses. When it was all done, she barely was able to avoid bankruptcy. Now she looked again at building a real estate portfolio, but this time she wanted to do it in a smart way by taking advantage of the 5 fundamental wealth-building strategies. Key for her was to make sure that the properties all created cash flow and created passive income. Will she make it? It's hard to say. She has to overcome the big emotional loss first before she ever fully trusts the real estate market again. Make sure your real estate investments can weather down markets by ensuring there is always good cash flow. Wealth building strategy number 5, risk reduction. There's no sense building wealth if you aren't also building a plan on how you're going to keep it. There are 2 main risks that you'll face as you build your real estate empire: risk from lawsuits and risk from excess tax. Early on, we explained how much easier it was to build wealth using real estate than it was to build wealth using stocks. But There is one inherent risk to real estate that stocks do not have. We call them tenants. Real estate is a real, tangible, physical proof of an asset. And there are semi-strangers in contact with this asset every single day. You need to protect yourself and the property against frivolous lawsuits. Additionally, you might have a situation where you are personally sued. For example, let's say you are a doctor and are suddenly personally sued for something related to your practice. You need to protect your assets against claims that might come about because of your personal acts. There are 3 ways to protect your real estate assets. 1. Insurance. 2. Debt. 3. Business structure. Insurance. Property insurance protects the value of the property against certain hazards. Notice that we said certain hazards. There are many catastrophic events that can be excluded from a traditional policy, such as earthquakes and hurricanes. These so-called acts of God will require supplemental insurance policies. Insurance generally has insufficient limits to protect you in case of a lawsuit. In our lawsuit-happy culture, this is becoming a growing problem for real estate owners. If someone slips and falls, and a jury determines that you, as landlord, were negligent in some way, you might get hit with a huge judgment. With a judgment in hand, the litigant, the person who sued you, can take your apartment building, your other property, and even your personal residence. The first level of defense is to make sure you have adequate insurance. Consider getting an umbrella insurance policy to cover higher limits of liability. This is a policy that is usually linked to your personal residence. The cost generally ranges about $500 to $1,000 per year for $1,000 of liability protection. Is that enough? It's hard to say. If you are sued for less than that, you're fine. But if something bad really does happen and your property is somehow found to be involved by a jury, then $1,000 probably won't be enough. Debt. You've probably heard the popular advice to pay off your mortgages early so that you can have your properties free and clear. Maybe you've thought of that as well, as a way of reducing your risk for the property. But the fact is that you actually reduce risk when you have debt, not when you pay it off. Let's use an example of someone who has a home with a $150,000 mortgage. The house is currently worth $180,000. So there is $30,000 worth of equity. But our homeowner is worried about losing his job, and so he makes the decision to start paying extra money on the note. Each month he pays an extra $1,000 toward the note balance. The mortgage balance keeps going down as his equity grows. And then, a few years later, the thing he feared most happens. He loses his job. But he thinks, I'm safer now, because I have paid extra on my note balance. Imagine his shock when he discovers that the bank still expects the regular payment next month. It doesn't matter that he has paid an extra $30,000 into the house. In fact, the bank is just all the more pleased when they foreclose on the property. You see, the extra payments didn't protect the homeowner, they protected the bank. If he had completely paid the house off and had it free and clear, he would lose the risk from foreclosure, but he would be even more of a target for lawsuits. Plus, he would have lost the wealth-building strategy of leverage of money. Seen in this light, debt actually protects the property owner. Business structure. The most popular way to protect property is through a properly set up and maintained business structure. There are 4 good business structures that can be used to own real estate. Selecting the best structure for your investments will depend on where the property is located and what you intend to do with the property. Generally, if you are buying a property to flip, you will have earned income. Earned income is money you work for. This income is subject to a self-employment tax of 15.3% if you hold the property in your own name, in the name of an LLC taxed at the default of single-member status or partnership, or if the property is held in the name of a general partnership. If the property is held in your own name, you have extra tax due to the self-employment tax, plus you put all of your other property at risk. The same risk occurs if the property is in the name of a general partnership. An LLC will give you asset protection, but if you are the only owner, called a single member, and you do not elect to be taxed as an S corporation or C corporation, you will have self-employment tax. If you have an LLC with multiple owners, called a multi-member LLC, and have not elected to be taxed as an S corporation or a C corporation, you will again have self-employment tax. Remember though, there is self-employment tax only when you have earned income. If you are buying property to hold, the income you earn is considered passive income. The best business structures for passive income properties are either the LLC with the default taxation structure or a limited partnership, LP. Basics of business structures for real estate investors. Know your exit strategy for the property. If plan is to flip property, use an S corporation or a C corporation. If plan is to hold the property, use an LLC or an LP. Risk from excess tax. It's amazing how many people we run into who are afraid to make more money because they don't want to pay more tax. If you want to pay less tax, the secret is not how much money you make, it's how you make your money. The government provides tax loopholes for real estate investors as an incentive to promote investments. We've discussed some of the tax benefits of real estate in previous chapters. A significant part of a good real estate investing strategy is minimizing risk from lawsuits and from excess tax. In both cases, you need experienced advisors and a well-thought-out plan to make sure you are taking advantage of all possible advantages. Maximize the 5 fundamental wealth-building strategies of real estate. 1. Leverage of money. Use other people's money to build your wealth. 2. Leverage of time. Use your knowledge and systems to maximize other people's time, knowledge, and systems. 3. Velocity. Get your program set and then move forward with confidence. 4. Cash flow. Always remember the fundamental. Get the money. 5. Risk reduction. Protect what you build.